the scene of a disaster that has haunted the world for the past 25 years. For Fiona Corcoran, charity worker, this is an emotional first visit to what remains of reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power station in Ukraine.
I'm standing here at reactor number 4 today, and this monstrosity is responsible for the deaths of innocent adults and children. I suppose it's this sadness really in my heart that I actually feel for the people that died as a result of this man-made accident.
In the early hours of April the 26th, 1986, a reckless safety test went wildly wrong, causing a mighty explosion and fire. The world's worst nuclear disaster started to unfold inside what was then the communist Soviet Union. There was an epic but hopeless struggle to contain the damage and a fire at the reactor's core. It burned on for almost 2 weeks, far worse than the crisis at Fukushima in Japan. Rather, this was Hiroshima writ large, Chernobyl eventually releasing 400 times more radioactivity. Emergency workers, known as liquidators, were exposed to fatal doses working on the roof. While on the ground, fireman Boris Alishayev was one of the few long-term survivors of the battle to contain the disaster.
People began to feel ill. Their hands and faces started burning. We felt dizzy, and someone started throwing up blood. But because the situation was so serious, we didn't notice time passing and ignored our symptoms, staying put there until 6 or 7 in the morning.
Following the accident, there was a massive evacuation of rural areas around the plant. Villages emptied, and many thousands resettled, never to return. Today, there are 2 strictly controlled exclusion zones within 30 and then 10 kilometers from the reactor, where officially no one is allowed to live.
Well, I think being at the 30-kilometre of the exclusion zone sort of surprised me, looking around at the beautiful, pristine countryside, and that the incredible wild horses actually roaming on the plains, and then the invisible radiation, which is the creator of death, the creator of illnesses, the creator of leukemias and cancers.
Another part of this extraordinary landscape is the now deserted and ghostly city of Pripyat, built to house many of the station's workers and their families. In all, 50,000 people were evacuated. "You'll be coming back in a few days," they were reassured, so they left their possessions behind. They now litter the place, a looted and forlorn relic of the accident.
Can you just imagine being here in a classroom and just having to move from your home, move from your family, move from your friends, probably never seeing them again. And then these people today, they're probably in their 30s or their 40s, and where are their children? Did their children survive?
Some, though, have defied the authorities and returned to their roots to spend their final years. People like Maria Mikhailovna and her husband Victor. They still draw their water and grow vegetables despite all the warnings of contamination. "25 years on, the consequences of the disaster are still being felt in areas on the edge of the exclusion zone. The long-term health effects in villages like this are now the main concern for those struggling to improve lives in the aftermath of the disaster. In Fiona's case, it was the plight of young children that first touched her heart. They lived in Belarus, Ukraine's impoverished neighbour, where a combination of wind and rain led to the highest level of radiation, contaminating crops and threatening the very lives of its people. 3 desperately ill children from the Gomel region were brought to Cork's Mercy Hospital for treatment.
I just became involved in a rota visiting these sick little children, and a few days later one little girl died. She passed away, a little girl called Evgenia Nestorenko, and it's because Evgenia's death, I suppose, really that's why I'm here today.
Subsequently, the Greater Chernobyl Cause has been supporting Ukrainian institutions dealing with the effects of the fallout, including Kiev's radiological hospital, where hundreds are clamouring to be seen every day. Their healthier future depends on more modern equipment to deal with cancers and other illnesses, an urgent need addressed with the charity's donation of a portable ultrasound. Estimates of deaths attributable to the accident vary from 4,000 to well over 100,000. There's argument over the exact number of people still affected by diseases and deformities, but some working on the front line are in no doubt about the scale of the problem. Take the City of Mellon's Hospital Paediatric Unit. It has 30 beds for children suffering from a wide variety of illnesses. They come from contaminated areas on the edge of the exclusion zones.
20 years on, there was a definite increase in cancers in children, an increase in blood diseases and weakening of the immune system. We see leukemia and malignant tumours of all sorts, brain, kidney and liver, and diseases that were once very rare are now very common.
The Greater Chernobyl Cause has also pledged to help the Żywito-Mir Rehabilitation Centre, which supports children born after the disaster but who live inside the less contaminated zones and come from broken homes and dysfunctional families.
The aid will include hospital beds, medical equipment, new clothes, stimulus material for the children, education material, toys, washing machines, walking frames, basically everything that you can think of.
Why not pledge your help by contributing towards the next consignment of aid? Radiation, a silent and invisible enemy, continues to haunt Fiona and is the driving force for her charity work in the former Soviet Union.
We're now approaching the 25th anniversary of the world's worst nuclear disaster, and the silence here is eerie today. The contamination, and the reason we're here, of course, is to continue our work with the children in the hospitals and the clinics and the orphanages who are affected with various different types of cancers and leukemias and respiratory disorders as a result of this.